Alright, what's up guys? New video today, super exciting statistical reveal that we have here. Our channel has gone from 0.3% female viewership to 1.1% female viewership. At this point, we may not have any male viewers left. I mean, it's incredible, the growth video after video that we've had. We have to cover this archetype, which is an all-female archetype, the Amazoness cards. Really interesting archetype. Hasn't been that good in the TCG, to be honest with you, but I have to mention this, it's actually fairly good in Duel Links. Again, I can't sort of avoid it because, like I said, it is very, very good in Duel Links for a very long time. Some of the cards were even on the ban list, semi-limited, all that great stuff. Onslaught, for example. It was a very good deck in Duel Links. Not sure if it still is now, but it has been for a very long time. We're going to cover that. But enough wasting time and goofing around. Let's get started. Right off the bat, I have to mention these cards. So these cards are not Amazoness cards. They're Amazon cards. Yeah, they're not Amazoness cards. So it's a little bit confusing because Konami actually released this card, Unfriendly Amazon, in the same set that all of the Amazoness monsters came out, which is Labyrinth of Nightmare. It's incredibly confusing to do to a player base. But yes, cards that say Amazon and not Amazoness are not considered Amazoness monsters. I have to mention this because if I don't, somebody will comment that I missed something. So that is an F tier because it just doesn't belong in the archetype. This is also it's not even that good of a card. Basically, it's a 2000 attack monster, and all it has on it is restrictions. It came out during a time when a 2000 attack monster was like a huge deal on a level 4. So it's nothing but a field of restrictions. This is Amazoness of the Sea. It's just kind of one of those like turbo pack short print cards that are in there. Again, it has Amazon in the name, but incredibly enough, it has two fusions. Two fusions that are 3 monster fusions, which is just incredible. This one in particular, it makes a heinous offense. This is Man-Eating Black Shark. I will not accept prejudice, particularly from a shark, so definitely F tier. And same thing with the Aqua Dragon. All these are F tier. They don't belong in the archetype. They have Amazon in the name, but not Amazoness. So they are off there. They are not included. But all of the goofy business out of the way, let's get to the real Amazoness cards. So right off the bat, we have the Amazoness Pet Tiger. This card is actually fairly good. It's a free special summon. I'd say all things probably B tier. So basically, when you summon an Amazoness monster, you can special summon this card, which is pretty cool. And then this card gains 100 attack for every Amazoness card in the graveyard, which doesn't really come up because this is 500 attack. But one of its main selling points is that it's an Amazoness Pet Tiger on the field, which allows you to go into the fusions, because the fusion requires an Amazoness Pet Tiger. So it's kind of like a decent card. Next, we have the Amazoness Pet Tiger. This card is, again, it's not a free summon, so you're going to have to waste your normal summon. I'd say probably C tier is fair. Definitely cool art. One of the coolest artworks in the whole archetype. Like, super duper nice. Basically, what this card does is you can only control one copy of Amazoness Tiger on the field at one time, which is like a stupid restriction. Because, basically, if this card's on the field, your opponent can only attack this card. So Konami was like afraid when this card came out that you would summon 2 of them and then lock your opponent out of attacking. This is incredibly slow and impossible today, but at the time maybe they were afraid that it was going to be a little scary. But this card also gains attack, 400 attack for every Amazoness monster on the field. I mean, to be honest with you, this can gain actually a fairly decent amount of attack because the deck actually does a pretty good job of swarming. If there's one thing that this deck is good at, it's swarming. But yeah, definitely C tier. It's got its uses, but questionable nonetheless. Next, we've got Amazoness Princess. This card is really good. There's not going to be a lot of S tiers in this archetype. Unfortunately, this archetype is a little frustrating because it's actually been used by 4 different characters in the anime. It was used by My Valentine. It was used by Tanya. It was used by the Tyler sisters, so 2 people. They're from Arc 5. It's used by 4 characters, and this archetype is incredibly small, like really small. It's almost embarrassing because there are archetypes that are absolutely enormous. Stuff like Photon, Galaxy, stuff like Performapals, stuff like I mean, it just goes on and on. Raid Raptors, just enormous, enormous archetypes. And this archetype is so small, it's used by 4 different anime characters. And I would consider it to be somewhat of a legacy deck slash fan favorite. So I don't know why there are so few cards. So just by virtue of that, there's going to be very few S tiers. But this card is actually an S tier. Basically, what it does is when it's normal or special summoned, it has the effect to add a Amazonis spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. Very good effect because it's a searcher. It's very important. And on top of that, this counts as Amazonis Queen while face up on the field, so it helps you go into the fusions without having to actually play the Queen if you don't want to play the Queen. So that's obviously another added bonus. This card has another additional effect where when it declares an attack, you can send a card from the field or from your hand to the graveyard, and then you can special summon an Amazonis monster from your deck in defense position. So this card is really good. Like it summons from the deck, which is like a huge bonus in Yu-Gi-Oh. It searches on summon or special summon, like normal or special summon, which is again a huge bonus in Yu-Gi-Oh. And it copies Amazonis Queen. The only concern I have with this card is in a village of all women, who is the father? I mean, that's the only. How do you have a princess? How do you have a princess if they're all women? I don't know. That's the only real question with this, but definitely an S tier. Very good card. Amazonish Trainee. This is another grave concern. She's like 50% tiger. Is the dad the tiger? I don't know. That's another. Or there's so many questions. But basically, the Amazonis card, uh, this Amazonis trainee is just okay. When it destroys a monster by battle, it goes to the bottom of the deck instead of going to the graveyard, which is pretty good because then your opponent doesn't get recursion. But there are just better Amazonis monsters to play. Also, it gains 200 attack when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle. Again, slightly irrelevant. And the only thing is, this card's like really, really weak. Like a whole really big problem with the deck is that it kind of lacks a boss monster. But yeah, this card is just really, really weak, and there are just better small monsters to play, like Princess and like Spy and some other ones that we'll get to. Amazonis Archer. This card is actually not a bad card, but it's just not good in this particular deck. You don't want to give up your monsters on field to inflict life points. Basically, this lets you tribute 2 monsters and then inflict 1,200 life points. This card is fantastic for FTK decks, but this card is just not that great in an Amazonis deck. I guess you could play one of it just to search it out and kind of finish a duel real quick, but most of the time you want to actually have your board presence. You don't want to tribute your monsters because your field spell helps you recur monsters. Lots of cards help you recur monsters. You definitely don't want to just give up your field presence by tributing them. That's probably the worst possible way to do it. Amazonis Blowpiper is trash. She has terrible stats. She has an effect where during your standby phase, you can make your opponent's monster lose 500 attack, but it's during your standby phase, so it's not even usable during their. There's so many issues with this card. It's terrible. It's got bad stats. It's just not great all around. Next is Amazonis Scouts. I'd say this is another kind of like C tier card. It's an okay card. Basically, it lets you quick effect tribute itself, and then your Amazonis cards can't be targeted by monster effects, and they cannot be destroyed by card effects. But again, this deck kind of does this weird thing where it protects its monsters from battle, it protects its monsters from card effects, but like the field spell, you want your monster to get destroyed by battle with the field spell. You want your grave Amazonis Spy to be destroyed by battle. There's certain cards that you actually want to get destroyed by battle and card effects so that you can get more value out of them, but it's almost weird. Looks like certain cards have battle protection, and in this card it has destruction protection, but in a lot of cases you actually want your monsters to get destroyed because it helps kind of get the engine of the deck going. So it's a little odd. But yeah, it's definitely got its use. It's definitely a cool one of. You could definitely kind of splash it into the deck, give yourself some extra protection. Next is Amazonis Queen. I'd say she's pretty much A tier. There's a card called Fusion Deployment that came out. It's really good with this deck because it's very good with this deck, and it's very good with a few other decks like Neospatians. It's incredibly good with this deck because basically what it does, it's a spell card that lets you reveal a fusion monster, and then special summon from your deck a monster that specifically is listed on that fusion monster. So you can reveal either the Amazoness Liger, or you can reveal um, the Amazoness Queen, the fusion one. You can reveal either of these two monsters, and then you can summon either Amazoness Queen or Amazoness Pet Tiger directly from the deck, and then you're locked into fusion summons. But again, it's not a big deal because you get to spit out a free 2500 attack monster, and this monster gives all of your Amazoness monsters protection. None of your Amazoness monsters can be destroyed by battle while this card is face up on the field, which is just phenomenal. It's even better battle protection than the tiger, and you can only control one single tiger. So yeah, this card is fairly good, and it's an easy, very easy boss monster that you can spit out, and it helps you go into the fusion, which is your kind of larger boss monster. Next is Amazoness Swordswoman. This is another card where it's very good in Duel Links, because in Duel Links you have 4,000 life points, so her effect is like really impactful. Basically what she does is any battle damage that she would take, your opponent takes instead. That effect is pretty good in combination with a few different cards. You can give again, you can like summon an Amazoness Queen, and then you can summon Swordswoman, and you can use the effect of Amazoness Call to make this attack all your opponent's monsters, and then you just crash into all of your opponent's monsters, and they take the battle damage from every single one of the attacks, and it doesn't get destroyed by battle. So it's a cool little combo that you can do. In Duel Links, this is kind of a big deal because you only have 4,000 life points, so they don't have that. If they have 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons and you attack all 3 of them, you basically win. But in regular Yu-Gi-Oh, it's very difficult to get up to 8,000 life points in one turn. Uh, yeah, it's certainly not easy. Like, even if they have, let's say they have 4 monsters, you attack all 4 of them, that's only 6,000. Like if they're bigger monsters, if they're 3,000 attack monsters, that's only, which is typically what's going to be on an end board. If they're a 3,000 attack monster, they're only taking 6,000. If they have 5 monsters, it's only 7,500. It's very difficult to cover that ground for the damage in the TCG. So that's kind of my issue with the card. It is pretty cool, though. You can search it, kind of summon it, and quickly just kind of end a game just by attacking a huge monster. So it's definitely got its uses. I definitely say play at least one of the card in the deck. It's one of the better level 4s. This is Amazoness Fighter, maybe? I forget the exact name. Basically, this card is just okay. Basically, you just do not take any battle damage involving this card. It's got okay stats. I think Amazoness Swordswoman is certainly better than the Fighter because you inflict damage to your opponent. And again, this is very much a battle phase deck. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like any other battle phase deck. It's kind of like War Rocks. It's got certain good cards, but a lot of the cards are kind of meh. Next is Amazoness Chainmaster. This is another C tier. This card had a cool moment in the anime where what's her name? My Valentine stole Merrick's Egyptian God card by destroying. Basically this effect, using this card's effect, it stole the Egyptian God card out of Merrick's hand, which is pretty cool. But basically, what this card does is, if it's destroyed by battle, you can pay 1,500 life points and then look at your opponent's hand, pick one monster, and then take it. It has a pretty cool effect. Again, this is a card that you can tech into the deck, but to be honest with you, there are just better effects. What you want to do with this deck is Swarm and Fusion Summon. That's what you want to do. This kind of doesn't fit that mold at all. If your opponent had any hand traps, they would just use the hand traps, so it's kind of pointless to take a monster from them. Like, I guess it's pretty cool because you can take like a combo card or like a recursion card and then use it against them, or just keep it from hitting their graveyard. I guess it's got that use, but like, I don't know. I've never really found a use in the actual game, unless you're like taking a hand trap. Next, Amazoness Spy. This card is pretty good. I'd say top of A tier. Basically, what it does is you can reveal an Amazoness monster and then special summon this card's kind of like alternative eyes. And then it's got another effect where if it's destroyed by battle, you can take an Amazoness monster from your graveyard and either put it in your deck or add it back to your hand. It's really good. I like it a lot because it gives you like kind of multiple recursions. Because again, this is a battle phase deck, so like if this is destroyed on the field while you have the field spell, you'll be able to special summon a monster and you'll be able to add a monster back to hand, which which is really, really good. Yeah, it's an awesome recursion card. It's also a level 3. This deck's levels are kind of all over the place. You have a lot of, for a long time, a lot of the cards were level 4s, like virtually all of the good ones were level 4s. And then, kind of out of nowhere, they dropped two monsters back to back: the Princess and the Spy. And the Princess and the Spy are both level 3s. So, because they're some of the better monsters in the deck, you have access to the rank 3 engine. You have access to stuff like Breaksword, and Breaksword actually is pretty good with the uh, Amazoness Onslaught card, which is one of the better trap cards in the deck. But yeah, I'd say it's like a decent card. Actually, it's one of the better cards. I don't know what I'm talking about. Next, we've got Amazoness Paladin. This is another C tier, probably somewhere around here. Basically, all it does is it gains 100 attack for every Amazoness monster on the field. So it's 1700. It's already an Amazoness monster. It comes out at 1800. And if you have the max capacity, which is 5, 17 plus it comes 22. Like, it's just one of your kind of bigger attackers. You can play it if you want. What's cool about its artwork, it actually is like basically My Valentine as an Amazoness monster. It's got like My Valentine's exact hair. Um, so I guess that's a cool aspect of the card there. Next is Amazoness Sage. This card I think is another one of the C tier cards. I use it here and there sparingly, but it's definitely again got its uses. Basically, what it does is if this card battled after damage calculation, actually during the end of damage calculation, you can target a spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy it. It would be cool if it was just target a spell and trap card on the field and destroy it, because then you could destroy your own onslaught and then go off. But unfortunately, it does not say that. But it is a pretty cool card in a lot of different ways. It's just I'm not a huge fan of destroying things after you attack, because if they had a battle phase trap or if they had a solemn or something, they would have already activated before this card even got a chance to attack. So I'm not a huge fan of like preemptive, I'm sorry, not preemptive, like post attack spell and trap card destruction, because if they had, for example, a mirror force, they would have just activated it. So it's kind of dumb to destroy stuff after you attack. But generally speaking, it's kind of like a half decent card. It's a good like spell and trap card out here and there. It's one of the better like main deck monsters. Unfortunately, this deck definitely needs more support. Next is Amazoness Pet Liger. This is definitely like a B tier card. It's just kind of like an okay card. There are definitely better cards in the deck. There's just a straight up better fusion in the deck, so that kind of hinders this card. It's one of your kind of strongest monsters with the field spell, and with all the other cards, it actually gains a reasonable amount of attack. Basically, it has a few different effects. Your opponent can only attack the Amazoness Liger, which is similar to Tiger. Its artwork is unfortunately not as cool as Tiger. Tiger is definitely one of the cooler artworks in the deck. Like Tiger, Swordswoman's really cool, but I'd say the artwork's just okay. The issue with this card is, again, no, it has the effect where your opponent can only attack this thing, which is always a pretty okay effect because it protects all of your other monsters, even though you kind of want your other monsters to be destroyed. But it's kind of like an okay effect, but its other effect is when it declares an attack, you can make it gain 500. It starts off at 25. With the field spell, it's 27. With a few other cards, it can keep boosting attack. But basically, it attacks, it gains 500. Also, if one of your Amazoness monsters attacks, after one of your Amazoness monsters attacks, you can target one of your opponent's monsters and make it lose 800 attack. It's just kind of like an okay effect. I wish it was something else. I wish it was like when your Amazoness monster declares an attack, target a card on the field, destroy. I wish it was something like that. Yeah, it's kind of like it's a very lackluster effect. Definitely, of the two fusion monsters, this one is not quite as good. Next is Amazoness Empress. This card is definitely A tier. It's a very good card. It's about kind of like the boss monster of the deck. It's very easy to summon, because you have stuff like it's very easy to summon because you have a ton of really easy ways to get into this. You have all types of cards like I said, the fusion deployment. You have ultra polymerization, which is very good because it floods the field with Amazoness cards. But basically, what this card does is it's a combination of an Amazoness Queen, which is easy to summon, and then any Amazoness monster. And basically, what this card does is it has three effects. Effect number one, which it stops your Amazoness cards from getting destroyed by battle or card effect, which gives you kind of like blanket protection. Uh, it has a second effect, which is any of your Amazonas cards, all of your Amazonas cards do piercing when they attack, which can help because they start going on the defensive. This can help put pressure on them. And then it has an effect where if this card is destroyed by your opponent's card effect or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, basically if your opponent outs this card in any way, you can special summon an Amazonas Queen from your hand, deck, or graveyard, which is really good because it basically, as long as this card's on the field and it's fusion summoned properly, you can basically go into it's almost always gonna float into the Amazonas Queen, which is really cool. Next is Amazonas Call. This is another S tier. This might be the best card in the deck because it literally searches the entire deck. Basically, like I said, it searches any Amazonas card except itself, and then it has a second effect. Basically, it searches or you can send to graveyard. There isn't a lot of good cards to send to graveyard as of right now, but there might be Amazonas cards with graveyard effects later on, which would make this card even better. So yeah, it lets you search an Amazonas card or send an Amazonas card to the graveyard, and then it has a second effect, which they didn't even need to have because the card was already good. But it's a very good card where it lets you banish this and then you target an Amazonas monster you control, and that turn it can attack all monsters your opponent controls. There's so many different uses for this card. You can use it with Amazonas Swordswoman because you can just attack into big monsters and make your opponent lose a ton of damage. You can attack with the Amazonas Queen, which does piercing. You can attack all of your opponent's monsters. But generally speaking, it's very good because it lets you wipe out your opponent's entire board and then just continue. Uh, yeah, it lets you wipe out your opponent's board and then it lets you kind of like continue on. It's a very, very good card. Next is Amazonas Village. This is another A tier. This is a very good card. You're always playing this deck. This field spell in the deck. Basically, what this card does is it makes all Amazonas monsters gain 200 attack. That is kind of like pointless. It's not a huge deal, but 200 attack is like, it's free. Why not? We'll take it. But then it has another effect where if one of your Amazonas cards is destroyed by card effects or by battle, you can special summon an Amazonas monster from your deck with a level either equal or lower, which is actually fairly decent because it kind of like, again, it gives you kind of recursion in your deck, gives it yeah, you can just keep summoning monsters, which is really good. Basically it turns every single one of your monsters into a floating card, which is pretty darn good. Um, yeah, pretty good. Amazon is Fighting Spirit. This is, it doesn't come up that often. I'd say it's probably D tier. Basically, when one of your Amazonas, it's a continuous spell. When your Amazonas monster attacks a monster with more attack, uh, you can gain 1000 attack, and it's continuous. So actually I'll put this a little higher. Basically what it does, it's cool in combination with the Amazonas Call, because if you have this on your side of the field and you have this with you activate the Amazonas Call, the graveyard effect to banish itself and make one of your Amazonas monsters attack, and then you can just attack all of your opponent's monsters, and it gains 1000 attack when it attacks, which is pretty cool, because then you basically have a 26 attack monster that attacks all your opponent's monsters. So I'd say it's fairly decent. Next is Amazonas Heirloom. I'd say this is probably around D. Basically, it's an equipped spell that makes one of your Amazonas monsters not get destroyed by battle once per turn, and then when that monster does battle, it destroys the monster that it battled with, which is, I guess, pretty decent because you can like attach it to Swordswoman, attack with Swordswoman, make your opponent lose damage, and then destroy that monster. But it's just so situational. They're just honestly better cards that are in the deck. You can just summon bigger monsters and just attack over your opponent instead of doing all of this goofy business. Next is Amazon as Spellcaster. This card is another kind of D tier. Just generally, there's no reason to really play it. You basically target one monster your opponent controls, one monster you control, and swap their attack. It doesn't really come up that often. Again, they're just better cards to play. Cards that actually get you advantage, like Princess, like the Amazoness Call, like all of these A and B tier cards. Like those are the cards you actually want to be playing. There's no point to like swap it. It's just, it doesn't come up. It's not that great of an effect whatsoever. Next is Amazoness Onslaught. This card is really, really good. Like, super good. It was so good that it was banned not banned, but it was like semi-limited in Duel Links. I don't know, again, I don't know the status of it now because I haven't checked the Duel Links ban list. But, yeah, when back back a couple of years ago, this card was like one of the best cards in all of Duel Links. It's a trap card with 3 effects. It's not, again, it's not quite as good in the TCG because the TCG is a lot faster, but in the Duel Links format, this card is crazy. It has 3 effects. One effect is that during the battle phase, you can special summon a Amazoness monster from your hand. Very good, and that monster gains 500 attack. Pretty good effect. It's basically like a double summon. Because you got your regular normal summon, then you get to summon with this. So it's definitely a very good card. It has another effect where if one of your Amazoness monsters battled, after damage calculation, you can banish the monster that battled with that Amazoness monster. That effect does not target, so if your opponent has some huge monster that can't be targeted, this is your out to that monster. You can out like a Dragoon with this card. It's just kind of incredible. And it has another effect where its last effect, which is if this card is destroyed, and it doesn't matter if it's destroyed by your effect or your opponent's card effect. If this card is destroyed, you can special summon an Amazoness monster from your graveyard. So this card is really, really good. Not only like its 2 effects on field are already really good, but on top of that, if your opponent negates and destroys it, or if your opponent destroys it, like if your opponent attempts to get rid of this, it still punishes your opponent. Like no matter what, your opponent's getting punished. Either they destroy it and that you get to summon a monster of your choice, or you get those 2 effects where you special summon from hand and banish after damage calculation. Either way, like you're still going to be able to get something out of this card. It's almost like always either neutral or a +1. That's why this card is like super duper good. Next is Dramatic Rescue. This card is incredibly situational. Basically what this card does is when one of your Amazoness cards is targeted by your opponent's card effect, so not targeted for an attack, but targeted by a card effect, you can return that monster to the hand and then special summon any monster in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! To the field. That effect is actually pretty cool, that you can summon literally anything. You can literally summon like Slifer the Sky Dragon if you wanted to. So that effect is pretty cool, but unfortunately, you are playing an Amazoness deck, so you're going to play all Amazoness monsters, so you're going to return a monster just to summon another Amazoness monster. It's not that big of a deal. Like, in theory, it's a pretty cool card, but again, it forces... It's only when your opponent targets one of your monsters that this card actually goes off, which is kind of why it's not the best card. Next is Is Willpower. This card is kind of like, I'd say C tier again. It's kind of like a Call of the Hunted for the deck, but technically speaking, this card is searchable, which makes it better than Call of the Hunted. You only have to play one of it because you can search it off of Call, or you could search it off of the Princess. So either way, it's searchable. It's got like a decent it's decent for that reason. But basically, again, it's like a searchable Call of the Haunted. When you activate it, you summon a monster from your graveyard in attack position, and if it can attack, it must attack. So it's a fairly decent card for that reason, but again, not like outrageously good. Next is Amazoness Archers. This is kind of like top of D tier. Basically, when your opponent declares an attack, you can change all monsters your opponent controls to attack position. Flip effects aren't activated, so that just tells you the age of the card, because flip effects aren't usable in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Virtually anymore, unless there's some like cheating around it, like Guru Control does, where the field spell flips it. But basically, what it does is it flips all your opponent's monsters to attack, and if they're able to attack, they must attack, and then that monster also loses 500 attack. So again, it's like it's got its remote uses, but to be fair, your opponent was going to attack anyway, and it's not like the card says like during this turn your opponent must attack. Their opponent has to already be in battle phase when this card is activated. This card would be a lot cooler if you could just like if it could just end your opponent's like main phase, like once they summon a monster, and force them immediately to go into battle phase or something like that. But unfortunately, like they're already in battle phase, so they're already willing to attack you anyway. So it kind of just it forces your opponent to do something they were going to most likely do anyway. So it's definitely not the best card. Next is the Amazoness Shamanism. This is kind of another D tier. Basically what it does is it destroys all of your... I'll put it in C tier. It destroys all of your Amazoness monsters on the field, and it lets you special summon that same amount of Amazoness monsters from your graveyard. It can trigger certain things like... it can trigger certain cool effects, but unfortunately... Yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of like a -1 all around. It's got the card's kind of like a -1, which is the reason I don't really like it. Uh, but outside of that, I mean, it can trigger certain cards, but again, it's just a -1, so I don't like it for that reason. Next is Queen's Pawn. I don't like this card either. It's incredibly slow. It's like super duper slow. Basically, what it does is when one of your Amazoness monsters destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Amazoness monster from your deck. Super slow because you got to realize something. So this card is only useful going second because you have to be attacking when this card is usable. So again, the problem is it's not even usable going second because you have to set this card and then wait a turn, then attack. So going second, you can't use this because unfortunately it's a trap card. So you don't get to actually use this card until turn 3 or turn 4. You either draw it turn 1 and set it and then plan to attack your opponent in basically 2 turns, you or you activate it in turn 4, which is it's just too late, to be honest with you. It's way too slow. It's a battle trap that requires you to attack. If it was the other way around, we can make the argument that this card would be usable, but in its current form, it's just not very usable. But that is everything. That is every single Amazonas card. This deck definitely 100% needs more support. It needs better main deck monsters, and it just needs more, it needs better spells to search. That's what it really does need, because the spells and traps are really lackluster with the exception of a couple of them. But that is the entire deck. If you enjoyed that, you know, like, subscribe, all that great stuff, and have a terrific day. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, check out the other videos on the channel, and please subscribe. It helps the channel a lot. Again, thank you so much. Have a terrific day.